marathon runner trained single-mindedly for years, pushing through pain and sacrifice, only to discover at the finish line that the discipline served an empty goal, one chosen by ego, not by values. A bodybuilder resists every temptation, counts every calorie, and achieves the physique they dreamed of, only to find themselves hollow and disconnected from why it mattered. Both persisted. Both resisted. Yet neither found what they sought. The problem wasn't their discipline. It was its direction. Hey there, it's me, Core, and you're listening to Exercising Self-Control from Fitness to Flourishing. Epictetus, the ancient Stoic philosopher, taught that two vices stand above all others: lack of persistence and lack of self-control. His prescription to deal with these was elegant. 2 words: persist and resist. Yet this formulation, if taken out of the context of Stoic philosophy as a whole, contains a hidden assumption that demands examination. That persistence and resistance are inherently virtuous. They're not. A person can persistently pursue destructive habits or resist beneficial impulses with equal determination. The real question is not whether we persist and resist, but toward what we are persisting and from what we are resisting. This is where the conception of virtuous self-control enters, not as mere restraint, but as directional influence. As I define it, virtuous self-control is living your highest values while realizing your most important goals, whatever the circumstances. It's the foundation upon which all other virtues rest. Wisdom, courage, temperance, and justice are not separate virtues, but expressions of virtuous self-control applied to different domains, circumstances, consequences, emotions, and relationships, respectively. The critical insight is that self-control operates through choice. You are, fundamentally, what you choose to do consistently. This isn't metaphorical. Your self-identity is your choice identity. Most of our behaviors flow from the conditioned self, that is, the automatized patterns we've internalized through repetition. These patterns activate without conscious thought, triggered by the environment. If X, then Y. But beneath this lies the choosing self, that is, the capacity to deliberately select a different response. Purposeful change requires conscious choice repeated until it becomes a non-conscious habit. This is where persistence becomes essential. It's not blind stubbornness, but the sustained commitment to make choices consistent with your highest values until they become your new automatic response. And resistance becomes the refusal to let circumstance, consequence, emotion, or social pressure pull you away from that commitment. Consider an athlete who decides to train not for external validation or aesthetic achievement, but because physical strength aligns with their core value of resilience, that is, the capacity to endure hardship and adapt to challenge. This athlete persists through difficult workouts, not because they love suffering, but because each session is a conscious choice to strengthen their conditioned self in service of their preferred identity. They resist the temptation to skip training or cut corners, not from fear of losing gains, but because they've identified themselves as someone who honors their commitments. Over months and years, this repeated choosing becomes second nature. The practice itself no longer requires willpower. It becomes who they are. The training serves something larger than the body. It serves the person they've chosen to become. This is virtuous self-control in action. the persistence and resistance look identical to the marathon runner or the bodybuilder, but the direction steering the choices transforms everything. The mechanism is what I call the preferred self. That is, a standard of personal excellence with which you consciously identify. This is not mere fantasy. It's a deliberate choice to see yourself as you aspire to be in the aspects that matter most to you. Then, in each moment of conscious attention, you make the choice consistent with this identity. You persist in this choosing until that virtuous identity becomes automatic and non-conscious. Musonius Rufus, who was the teacher of Epictetus, captured this sentiment. Begin quote. If we measure what is attractive by pleasure, nothing should attract us more than self-control. If we measure what to avoid by pain, nothing should be more painful than its absence. End quote. Self-control is not deprivation. It's the only reliable path to genuine flourishing. Those two words of Epictetus, persist and resist, gain their power only when directed by this framework. Persist in what? In the choices that align with your highest values. Resist what? The circumstances and impulses that would pull you from them. Without this directional component, persistence and resistance are merely mechanical. They could serve vice as easily as virtue. Stoic strength lies not in blindly persisting and resisting, but in the conscious, deliberate choice to align these capacities with your preferred self. This is why virtuous self-control is foundational. It's the bridge between who you are and who you choose to become. When discipline serves your highest values, it ceases to be a burden and becomes a joyful expression of personal excellence. That's it for today. Catch you next time.